At first, when these triplets came into the world, not much seemed to be wrong. They all had that beautiful pink-colored skin, and each of them had already been individually resting on their mommy's chest. Yet there was something very strange about them. But when the child on the right opened her eyes, the doctors ran out of her room. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our upcoming stories. Mindy and David had been trying to get pregnant for so very long, but no matter how much they tried, it just wouldn't work for them. Mindy was 33 and David a few years older. It wasn't a disaster, but Mindy did of course realize that every year it failed again, her chances of becoming a mother diminished a little. So you can imagine that both parents were in seventh heaven when they first read that plus sign on their pregnancy test. The two future parents hugged and cried. They were over the moon. But they absolutely had not counted on the news the doctor would bring to the couple. When it was finally time for her first ultrasound, Mindy and David went to the hospital full of stress. You know the baby is there, but it's still such a different feeling when you see it on a monitor in person for the first time, Mindy explained. Mindy's belly had already grown considerably, much faster than the mother-to-be had expected. But when the doctor rolled the ultrasound machine over her belly, it quickly became abundantly clear what was going on here. "Congratulations, you have triplets in your belly, ma'am," the doctor called out with a cautious smile. This was of course hefty news to take in, but David's and Mindy's reaction was not what the doctor expected. Mindy and David almost jumped in the air, and the only reason they didn't fly directly into each other's arms was because Mindy was still full of echo gel and tangled in some cables. "That's great news," David exclaimed loudly. They couldn't believe their eyes when they saw the 3 hearts beating on the screen. Both parents-to-be had tears in their eyes. They both desperately wanted a big family and thought they would have to make do with just one or no child. They kept a close eye on everything in the months that followed. After all, with triplets there could be some complications, but everything seemed to be going well. Mindy's belly had grown tremendously in the 9-month-long pregnancy. Her 3 girls were pretty much ready to be born. Yes, all 3 of her babies were girls, and not just that, they were also identical triplets, which meant they were going to be 100% perfectly alike. Even doctors called this pregnancy extremely special and were curious about the end result. And even though Mindy was thrilled with her pregnancy, she also thought it was about time her ladies left her belly. The last months were tough for the mother, which is of course not surprising with such a big belly. When her waters finally broke and the contractions started coming within short periods of time, they got in the car to the hospital. David tried to drive cautiously at first. You obviously have precious goods on board with your wife and your future children. But a leisurely drive soon turned into a roller coaster. The contractions were now suddenly very close together. He knew he could not mess around anymore. He pushed down on the gas pedal and hoped that they wouldn't encounter police. According to Mindy, their girls were ready to be born. Maybe everything just goes faster with triplets, David thought, listening to his wife scream in the chair next to him. And even tough David was driving as fast as he could. The drive still felt like an eternity to both David and Mindy. Although many women spend several hours in the hospital without any visible delivery action, Mindy's delivery was able to start almost immediately. The doctors present also confirmed that both parents should not have arrived a second later, or else the delivery of their precious triplets would have most likely started in the car. Because although you might expect this to happen often, the natural birth of triplets is still a rare occurrence. A lot can go wrong in a short amount of time, which is why the room was filled with doctors and nurses to keep a close eye on everything. With a loud cry and a big final breath from Mindy, her first baby girl came into the world. It was a beautiful sight, and on first inspection she seemed completely healthy. She cried almost immediately, which is always a good sign with newborns, and she was then placed on the chest of her now also crying mother. What a beautiful girl. But Mindy couldn't enjoy this moment for very long, because baby 2 was on the way with a third one waiting behind her. And that third baby in particular was going to be a special one. A baby that left even the most experienced doctor with question marks. Mindy felt the next contraction coming on. It was time for her second child. Her second child clearly wanted to come into the world even faster than her first one, because for Mindy it felt like she was barely pushing and her next baby girl was already on her chest. A little more quiet than her first one, which made her nervous a little bit, but she was at least as beautiful. You can already see here that they look alike. A nurse spoke softly as she pointed to the baby's chin. The baby was given to David, who placed her in a cot. For Mindy had to start giving birth to her third child, and this child suddenly changed everything. Neither of the parents had had a moment's rest from the time they left home, so you can imagine that both parents were most happy when Mindy and David's third child was also born healthy. Finally, the pressure was literally and figuratively gone, and both parents could breathe a sigh of relief for the first time since they left their house. They lovingly looked at each other and their third girl and smiled happily. What they did not yet know, however, was that this little girl was extremely special. She had something that no doctor at the hospital had ever seen. Two exhausted parents, one a lot more than the other, of course, with their three beautiful girls. They were given a moment by the staff present to let the whole situation sink in. Mindy and David held their babies at the same time and even placed a bow in the hair of one of their daughters. Their little ones were sleeping peacefully with their eyes closed. But everything changed when they opened their eyes. This would be a memorable moment. But what was about to happen was even more special than anyone could have imagined. Their girls Amber, Laura, and Nadine were gently laid on a blanket just before that first moment. They lay there so peacefully, and Laura even unconsciously wrapped her arms around her newborn sister. A worthy photo moment that brought tears to the eyes of both parents. Slowly, her first two children opened their eyes, still half asleep, but quietly awakened. The babies took a look at the world outside for the first time, but it was the third baby, Nadine, who would suddenly give these parents the fright of their lives. The doctors just came back in and saw that both parents were no longer holding their children. He asked them, "Is this an appropriate time to take them with us? We need to check a few more things." Mindy and David nodded approvingly, and the doctor walked over to the brand new triplets. By now, Amber and Laura had both eyes wide open. They were looking at the man in the white coat affectionately, but Nadine clearly still preferred to sleep as her eyes were fully closed. He stroked the little girl's head. Somehow that did the trick, because they saw her waking up from her slumber, and then she also slowly opened her eyes. But what the doctor then did startled the parents very suddenly. Nadine opened her eyes and then also, just like her sisters, looked at the world around her for the first time. It was a beautiful child, with even more beautiful eyes. But it was these very eyes that made the doctor take a step back. "This is extremely unusual," he announced. He mumbled something, but both parents could not understand what he was saying. He looked at Nadine again and then wrote some quick words on his notepad. "What the hell is he doing?" Mindy whispered to David in a low voice. "I've never seen anything like this before, and this really should be impossible," he told the parents. These statements made Mindy and David nervous. He walked away from the children and began an inspection of Mother Mindy, who did not understand what was going on. He grabbed her wrist and took some measurements. He also looked repeatedly at the computer that had all the babies' collected data on it. Apart from giving birth. After giving birth, Mindy assured the man she felt fine but admitted feeling nervous about the situation. Concerned, she asked the doctor if something was wrong with her baby. The doctor reassured her it was likely nothing but needed to investigate further. He then left the room, inviting David to follow him. The doctor led David to a nearby room, where David sat down as the doctor gazed out the window, removing his glasses. "I've worked in this hospital for nearly 40 years, and I've never encountered anything like this." David, who tried to keep it cool earlier when he was around his wife, now began to get noticeably restless. His palms were sweaty and his hands were noticeably shaking the entire time. With trembling legs, he asked the doctor to really give some clarity now. The doctor went to stand next to David and grabbed his notepad to show him something. He began by apologizing for his secretive behavior. This was new to him, too, and in his mind, he was still too busy deciphering what had just happened. Normally, doctors in this hospital can be short and sweet about a delivery. The doctor assured David that all three of his daughters were in perfect health, with no signs of any abnormalities. Despite the reassuring news, David couldn't help but notice the doctor's peculiar focus on Nadine. He questioned internally why the doctor seemed so captivated by her case and why this discussion needed to take place in private. Mindy waited anxiously in her hospital room, feeling uneasy after being left alone for over 10 minutes. The attending staff tried to calm her, reassuring her that nothing was wrong and that her daughters were perfectly healthy. Despite these assurances, Mindy couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Why had David and the doctor left for a private conversation? Why had they been gone so long? When David and the doctor finally returned, Mindy's irritation surfaced. David reassured her with a warm smile and affectionate gestures toward their daughter, Nadine. The doctor apologized and explained that unusual news, even positive, could be overwhelming for a mother who had just given birth. He wanted to confirm a few details before sharing the information. The doctor began by acknowledging the uniqueness of the event. Identical triplets are already an extraordinary occurrence. However, what set this case apart was Nadine's eyes. While Amber and Laura had identical blue-green eyes, Nadine's were a deep, dark brown, an anomaly that defied biological norms. This genetic mutation, while rare, made Nadine all the more remarkable. 6 years later, a family photo showcases Mindy, David, and their cousins holding the triplets as babies. Amber and Laura share identical features, while Nadine stands out with her darker hair and slightly reddish complexion. Her striking brown eyes remain a captivating feature her parents adore. Today, the family celebrates the individuality of all three daughters. Mindy expresses their unconditional love for each child, emphasizing that Nadine's uniqueness only adds to the joy they feel as parents. The family cherishes each moment with their remarkable girls, grateful for the happiness they bring every day. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another unbelievable tale like this one.